Just recently, I interviewed a young man called Mario Fabri, and he does growing vegan or trying vegan with Mario Fabri. So we're going to do something a little different because that name is taken. We're not going to try going vegan, or we're going to decrease our meats and increase our veggies. How about that? Whichever way. Does that work?
Okay, but I hope I don't surprise you, because at some point I am going to say it's good to do a short-term test without the animal products at all.
Good. I love it. I love it. No, we are going to focus on having a vegan whole food plant-based, because there's a lot of unhealthy vegans out there too, right? Okay. So it is time to dance. So fasten your seatbelt. We're going to learn and grow with Dr. Neal Barnard when we get started. So it's time to dance, Dr. Barnard. I'm so used to calling you Bernard. Barnard.
It's anyways okay.
I love it. I love it. Okay. Now, when's your next gig for playing?
Music-wise, I'm doing the writing and studio part again. So it's kind of a cycle where you do lots and lots and lots of writing and arranging and studioizing, and a million years later, a new album comes out. So
I'm looking forward to that new album. Okay, here we
go. Thank you. Thanks for asking about that.
The Lillian McDermott Show.
Check them out. It's really good.
At whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who have been tuning in time after time, welcome back. But if you are new to the Lillian McDermott radio show, let me tell you that this is no accident. I'm glad you stumbled upon me. And that for those of you who are new, just know that this is a safe place where you can go to when you need a friend. A little bit about me. It is that I am committed to provide alternative ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friends, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Now, today, we've talked about so much about, different ways that we can improve our life and our health. And just recently, I interviewed this young man named Mario Fabri, and he does a television show called Trying Vegan with Mario. And I wanted to make this title, but not with Mario. It's going to be with Dr. Neal Barnard. So what we're going to do today is we're going to figure out how we can embrace trying something different, reducing our meats, increasing our veggies, going whole food plant-based. But how do we do this? Well, fortunately for us, we have, oh my gosh, world-renowned New York Times best-selling author, professor, researcher, activist, incredible musician, Dr. Neal Barnard. And he is going to teach us how we can, like I said, try vegan, but we're going to just not even think about the word vegan. We're going to get healthy. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am grateful that Dr. Neal Barnard is here to do just that. Welcome, Doctor, to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show.
Thank you, Lillian. It's great to be with you again.
Nice that you're here. And so let's talk about your journey, because there's a lot of people that have heard the show that are curious. They're becoming curious about doing something different about their food, letting their food be their medicine. How did this happen for you? How did you make that decision?
Well, I got to tell you, for much of my life, it was the complete opposite direction. I grew up in North Dakota, and I never really thought much about healthy eating. It was kind of the opposite. My extended family was all in the cattle business. So my great-grandpa and then my grandpa and then my father. And my father didn't like raising cattle. So as soon as he was old enough to get out of it, he did. And he went to medical school. And then he spent his life as the diabetes expert for Fargo, North Dakota, and eastern North Dakota, western Minnesota. But I got to tell you, Lillian, we still ate like we were in the cattle business. So every day of my life, it was roast beef and baked potatoes and corn. And that's really the way it was. And, we never really put two and two together. We never really thought, well, maybe the eating habits that we have could be the reason why there are things like heart attacks or certain kinds of cancer or diabetes and whatnot. And anyhow, for me in my own life, it wasn't until much later, until I reached adulthood, that I started to think, wait, maybe food does matter. And of course, now in my professional life, what I'm dedicated to really is putting it all to the test, where we bring in people who have serious conditions, we change their diets in controlled ways so that we can actually see what a diet change will do. And then we publish the findings in the literature. So for me, it's been a scientific journey as well as a personal one, because I've got to tell you, I'm doing my best to practice what I preach. So it's no good testing healthy diets if you don't actually then put them to work.
Absolutely. So with that in mind, growing up as a meat eater, growing up in the cattle business, growing up where this is culture.
Right, that's for
Now,
sure.
was this something that you decided on your own, or did your family embrace this new mentality, this new thought process that perhaps we should reduce the animal products? How did it go for you? Because for my family, it would have been easier for me to walk away from my religion.
Yeah. I know what you mean. The year before I went to medical school, I was living in Minneapolis, and I had a job at Fairview Hospital. And down in the basement of the hospital was the hospital morgue. And my job, Lillian, was to help the pathologists who were doing the autopsy. So somebody would die in the hospital, and then my job was to prepare the body and help the pathologist do the exam. And I want to tell you, there is no place that is more, I'm going to say, motivating than to see, here's what killed him. And so the pathologist, on one particular exam, the pathologist, we had a man who had died in the hospital of a heart attack, probably from eating hospital food, which is the way I think of it. But anyway, so he had a heart attack in the hospital, and the pathologist removed a big chunk of ribs off the chest and put it on the table. And then he showed me that the coronary arteries, the arteries to the heart, were filled with plaque. This is these little bumps of cholesterol and fat that form in the arteries. And he said, this is from your bacon and eggs and, the stuff that, you grow up on. I thought, well, that's great. Anyway, at the end of the exam, we put the ribs back in the chest and sewed up the skin. I went up to the cafeteria. They were serving ribs for lunch.
Oh boy, that's enough. That's enough to do something. Let's continue.
That was my motivator.
When we return worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you. OMG, that is, so did it look very similar to the human ribs?
Yes, and it smelled like it.
Oh.
and I got to tell you, I didn't become vegetarian on the spot, but I was looking at it. I had just been down in the basement with all this blood and guts and everything, and this chunk of ribs in my hands, put them back in the chest, sewed up and everything. And then when I got up there and the ribs were in the cafeteria line, and you could smell them, and they look like a dead body, I thought, that's what this is. And so I don't know if you'd call that a health issue or an ethical. It wasn't that. It was more like aesthetic. So from then on, the animal parts smelled to me like the bodies. And just as time went on, other things started to click for me too. I started to remember how the mistreatment of the animals, they weren't so keen on being brought to slaughter. No. And I hunted as a kid. I started to rethink that. And then I started to learn more about the health aspect.
This was a whole transformation for you. That moment of awareness kind of like allowed a flood of emotions to come to you.
Oh, yeah. And also, it's not such an easy thing necessarily to realize that the culture that you've grown up with is just intrinsically unhealthy. But I have to say that despite all the good parts about growing up in the Midwest and being in my family and so forth, there were a lot of things that had we had a chance to do them over, we would have changed what we did.
Interesting. So were you embraced with because I know that my family made fun of me for a long time. Were you embraced when you said, guess what? I'm going to do this.
Not at first. I come from, there are 5 kids in my litter, so to speak. My mom had 5 kids. Wouldn't wish that on anybody, but my poor mother had to deal with me and 4 others. And I just honestly think that parents should not be expected to take advice from somebody where they had to change their diapers. And so even though I am a physician and NIH funded and I've written a lot of books, I have to forgive my mother for not having wanted to pay any attention to my nutritional advice. And it was many years before she did start to listen. I'll tell you about that.
Yes, yes. Make sure your chat button is open, and if you see me get off the mic, that you know. Sorry about that. Sorry that I had to.
No, that's okay.
But those are hard outs. You're so good.
Once again, here's Lillian.
Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott radio show, where we always learn and grow together. Today's teacher is world-renowned. I mean, if you want to learn more about the character of Dr. Neal Barnard, you can go to Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. If that doesn't say it in one clean swoop, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. Dr. Neal Barnard is the founder and the founder of this. You're the president, right, of this group.
Yeah.
And so this is what responsibility looks like. Someone who grew up in a cattle farm saying all of a sudden this awakening, and you can hear more of his story when you go to whenyouneedafriend.com. You can click onto the my YouTube channel, and watch how he completely started his transformation. Now, Dr. Barnard, you have been a champion for veganism. And I had said off the air, there's a lot of unhealthy vegans. So I want to focus on whole food, plant-based nutrition. But why should we even consider it? Let's just start with there.
Yeah. There's lots of reasons. You know, people have gone to plant-based diets for many, many reasons. One of the oldest reasons was just people couldn't afford anything else. I'm talking about thousands of years ago, and more recently in some parts of the world, people could eat beans and they could eat grains and vegetables, but they didn't have money for steak and cheese and things like that. And say in China, for example, in rural China, I don't think you'd call the people exactly vegan, but they were eating predominantly plants. Mm-hmm. And it was because of economics. And now that economics has changed in China, cheese and meat are coming in to their detriment. And sometimes people have made this change for religious reasons, or because they're concerned about animals, or because they're listening to Al Gore saying we're killing the planet by the choices that we make. But the good thing is that all these reasons work together. From my standpoint, we have done head-to-head tests of plant-based diets versus other kinds of diets. And the more your diet is built from vegetables and fruits and whole grains and beans, the better off you are when it comes to weight or cholesterol or blood pressure or diabetes, or frankly, just longevity. So all these reasons work together.
You know, I've seen people that are about to take, as a matter of fact, I was so proud of my husband yesterday. He sounded like me. He has a colleague that is had some health issues, some cardiac issues, and they just put him on some blood pressure medication. And he actually encouraged him to look at, you know, whole food, plant-based, and he was telling him about the, you know, forks over knives, and he was talking about you and all these different ways to not even start. But let's talk about conditions that will manifest into health if you change to a whole food, plant-based diet.
Sure. The one that's so pervasive is weight. So many people struggle with weight, and they're doing every kind of goofy, gimmicky thing to try to lose weight. But the studies show very, very clearly that when you get the animal products off your plate, the more you do that, the easier it is to control your weight, even without counting calories. And sometimes people freak out because they'll think, gee, a vegan diet or plant-based diet means you're going to eat more rice and other things that are carbohydrate. And that's true. And the beauty of it is that you can eat these carbohydrates that people are sometimes afraid of, but you're losing more weight than you ever have lost before. And it's amazing. We had a whole group of research participants here last night, and they were talking about how they're eating things like pancakes and pasta and rice and so forth they hadn't eaten before, but their weight control is very easy. So weight is number one. We are known for doing work on reversing diabetes, and that's a huge epidemic now that gets dramatically better when people change their diets. Cholesterol can drop, blood pressure can drop. So your husband's friend, when he was diagnosed with hypertension, you know, the doctor really needs to tell him, this is not a deficiency of blood pressure medicine that caused this.
Correct.
Foods caused it, maybe extra weight caused it, or there are other things. Sometimes genetics play a role, but it's usually not that. And so sometimes people need medication But wow, the power of food changes is just enormous, both over the short term and over the long term.
And I love hearing what you're saying, and it resonates with me. But many people would rather be sick than not eat their animal products or change their lifestyle or their diet. They even when I do a lot of research before a show, and I've even seen how it says, vegans have more depression, or they die earlier. There's a lot of myths out there. Could you kind of talk about some of these myths and why they're so prominent out in the world?
Well, people defend whatever they're addicted to. So,
Okay.
people who are into anything, I mean, they'll find reasons to defend it, even if it's steak or cheese or something like that. No, when people go on a vegan diet or a plant-based diet, a vegan diet, by the way, does not mean that you have to be a philosopher or a librarian. It doesn't mean that you have to have a taste for folk music. It doesn't put you anywhere on the political spectrum. All it means is that you're not eating animal products. And when people follow a vegan diet, they are always in the skinniest, healthiest group there is. And athletes who go vegan do fantastic. They typically outperform the competition. Their endurance is just better than other people. But let me come back to what you were talking about earlier, that there are sometimes unhealthy vegans. Maybe, but there are a lot more unhealthy meat eaters in the world. And if a person who's a meat eater, like me, when I was growing up, that's what I ate all the time. When you get the animal products off your plate, that's always a good change. But if you're also eating a lot of junk food, and I'm talking about sodas and candy and snacks and stuff like that. If you get the animal products off your plate, that's a good move. But you might want to go further. You might want to also clean up the rest of your diet. So going vegan to me is a great first step, but there's lots of other stuff you'll want to do too. So if I have a person who's got diabetes, we'll use a plant-based diet. But I'll also say, what about all the fried foods that you're eating? Why don't we learn some non-oil cooking techniques? Mm-hmm. And when you're choosing a bread, instead of it being white bread, let's go to a whole grain bread or a rye or a pumpernickel. And so you start the process of improving all parts of the diet. So getting the animal products off is just part of it.
Okay. Well, and so with when you're saying anybody will defend their position, so what I'm hearing you say is that there's no correlation between vegans being the most unhealthy people in the world and vegans being the most depressed people in the world, people that have died earlier. So you're saying that they're just defending it, but there's no evidence that will support that.
Let me put it this way. We have, in our research studies, let's talk about, for example, mood and depression, that sort of thing. We've done a number of studies, and other teams have done the same thing, that when people change to a more plant-based diet, their moods typically improve. And I'm speaking specifically, depression goes down, anxiety goes down, job performance goes up. It can be subtle. We did a study with Geico, the insurance company, because their national office is right over there, about 4 blocks away from my office. And so we've done 2 big studies with them. And we showed that all these things got better. And part of that is because you're skinnier, you're healthier, you got more energy, so your mood elevates. There may also be brain effects of diet, but no, vegans can sometimes be worried because they're worried about all the other people around them who are on not the healthiest diet. It's like your husband. His friend says, I got high blood pressure. It's over that. The guy with the high blood pressure, all his problems, he's not vegan. He's, I'm assuming. And, you worry about people like that. So you become a bit of an existentialist, but no, it does not cause depression.
Well, interestingly enough, my husband has been resistive of this, and this year, in the last, I don't know, several months, he's reducing. That's why I wanted to change the title about going vegan or increasing a whole food plant-based lifestyle. I am just excited that he is considering reducing it, and he's doing a really good job, but it's becoming a part of how he's thinking now. It's changing the way he's thinking. Now, he believes, though, and a lot of people believe as well, that it is important because you hear about the vitamin B12 and the other, the deficiencies that could occur if you only eat whole food plant-based lifestyle. I don't know if that's even true. Can you address some of that? Is it okay for someone to have animal products once in a while to fulfill some of the, like the B12s and?
Here's what I suggest. And your husband could do this, or frankly, anybody. We do this a lot. We've done this with thousands of people. What we say is don't make any commitment about what you're going to do, but try this. Take just 7 days. And during this first 7 days, eat whatever you want to. Don't take anything out of your diet. But during the 7-day period, try plant-based foods and just identify things that you would like for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner. So for breakfast, maybe oatmeal, but let's make some blueberries and cinnamon on it to make it taste good. Or if you have a meat chili, have a bean chili. If you go to an Italian restaurant, top it with tomato sauce on your spaghetti instead of meat sauce. So for the first 7 days, you're just testing out different things. Then, at some point, take 3 weeks and do it all vegan all the time. By that, I mean you're taking just 21 days as kind of a test drive, and with no animal products at all. And what people very often experience in this 21-day period, which by the way is easy because you already identified in the first 7 days, you identified the foods that would work for you. Mm-hmm. So you're taking 21 days, you're doing it all vegan. At the end of that time, first of all, physically you're changing. You're losing weight, your energy is better, your digestion is better, but also you start looking at food differently and your tastes start to change. So that's the way I encourage people to do it. Don't give up your skepticism, and don't say, I'm forever and ever and ever going to have to eat in a certain way. We're just doing this right now. And it very often changes people's lives. So cutting down is good. Taking steps in this direction is good. But at some point, give yourself a week to try new foods, and then 3 weeks to have it be all plant-based all the time. And it's a cool experience.
I don't know if I shared this with you or because I've said it before on the show, but that's how my journey changed on the show. After about a year or so of being on the show, I had a raw foodist come on my show because I tried his food and it was so yummy. And he said, you know what? I'm going to challenge you to go raw vegan for a month. And after like 3 or 4 days, I felt better. It wasn't that I felt bad, is that I didn't know there was better.
Right.
And so do you hear that a lot with some of the people that come to do the research with you or participate in
all the time. And the vegan part is actually really quite easy and very rewarding. And then the other things like going low oil or whatever, sometimes that's a little more challenging for people because, you go out to a restaurant, they're just in love with their extra virgin olive oil. But the vegan part is easy and really cool, really rewarding for people to try.
Yeah. And let's talk about that. Why is oil? Because, if people defend sugar, people defend their meat, but a lot of people defend oil because they're saying, well, why is this population, the Mediterranean diet, which is high in rich oils, why is this so bad? So what would you say quickly, because we're coming to the end of this and we can continue spilling it over into the off the air conversation. Why don't we wait for that one off the air conversation about oils? Because we just recently had one of your friends and the name just escaped me.
Was it Dr. Esselstyn?
Well, he was just on, but also Mark, I'll remember his name.
Not Mark Hyman.
No. I'll remember. And we're going to continue our conversation when we're worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you. Gosh, he did the good, bad, and ugly of salt, sugar, and oil.
Oh, you got me.
He's now working with you. Oh, gosh. I'll remember his name. But
you remember right after the show.
I'll remember. So let's talk about oil and why is oil so bad for you?
Well, I got to say, I think the debate isn't finished on oil.
Okay.
Let me give you the bad and the good. The bad part is that any kind of fat, whether it's animal fat or vegetable fat, vegetable oils, they're really dense in calories. And the numbers are that while carbohydrate like sugar or starch has 4 calories in a gram, any kind of fat, animal fat or even vegetable oil has 9 calories in a gram. So carbohydrates have 4, oils have 9. If a person's trying to lose weight, which foods they really want to avoid? They want to avoid the fatty foods. So you're at a restaurant and let's say it's a beautiful Italian restaurant, and they bring the bread with that little dish of oil, and you dip it in there and you swallow it down, you just swallowed a bunch of calories you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And then they bring your pasta and it's all like drowning in oil. The calorie content is way higher than it would be before. So that's the negative part. And so if I have a person I'm trying to help them lose weight, I'm going to go low oil. But Lillian, you said just before the break, what about the Mediterranean countries? And it's true. They're not avoiding olive oil; they're embracing it, and their health
Middle Eastern country.
Yeah, exactly. And their health is better now. But very quickly, I have to say though, the Mediterranean countries have been changing. Back when the Mediterranean diet was first investigated, it was not an oily diet at all. I'm talking about southern Italy. If they used a cooking fat, it was typically oil. Or if they added fat, might have been olive oil, but they weren't drowning things in it. That was the one they would use instead of butter, but it wasn't like they were using enormous amounts. And in the town of Nicotera, Italy, which was the archetypal Mediterranean diet, ground zero, the percentage of calories from fat was 23%. You compare that to the United States, where it's 35%. So despite the fact that oil was their preferred form, it was a low oil diet. What it was a vegetable rich diet. And it was vegetables and fruits and berries, and that was the bulk of the diet. Meat played a small role. Cheese was not really so big in the southern Mediterranean. And as time has gone on, the cheese has invaded, meat has come in more, oil has come in much bigger, and it's made it harder and harder for them to lose weight.
We just don't remember history. It's a lot easier to recreate it and reinvent it. And it's nice to know that you've done the research and, the original. It's just like, when they talk about paleo and, when people go paleo, they start eating all this meat, bacon, all this stuff. And I'm thinking, I don't think even the cave people ate like that because there was no refrigeration and they probably split whatever catch they got among the village, and so you got very little meat, and what else do you have is the vegetables and your fruits.
Yeah, exactly. And of course now we have the beauty of randomized clinical trials where we can actually test these things, and so that's what we do, and we're able to say with really good confidence which kinds of diets work out the best.
Yes. So the name is Dr. Michael Clapper.
Oh, sure. Yep. I've known Michael for many years.
And he talked about the good, the bad, and ugly of salt, sugar, and oil.
And Michael was always right. I do want to say that too.
That you are a great guy. So he loves you.
Michael is good. He's been doing this for longer than I have, and Michael is always right.
He really explained things very well, and I'm going to have people go to that show also if they want to learn a little bit about salt, sugar, and oil. But it's one of those things where I get people, oh no, I need my meat. Is meat in smaller consumptions, does it cause adverse reactions?
It's dose related. So if you look at people who let's say you take people who eat meat every day, people who eat meat not very often, maybe less than once a week, and people who don't eat it at all, you could see very distinct differences between those groups. If you eat it uncommonly, in moderation, maybe less than once a week, your average weight is going to be lower, your diabetes rate is going to be lower compared to people who eat it every day. But if you avoid it completely, it's another step right down. Diabetes is much more rare, and weight problems are rare too.
Wonderful. Okay, so let me go over my how to get a hold of me, and then I'll reintroduce you as well.
You bet.
I love this because it gives people a plan.
Once again, here's Lillian.
Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show, where you can hear us worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. I'm your host, Lillian McDermott, and it is my goal that we learn from each other. Please know that the person in front of you knows something you don't know. I know something you don't know. And that's the way we should look at life, with childlike wonder. Try to figure out what it is about the person in front of you that can be your teacher. And today's teacher is Dr. Neal Barnard. We're talking about reducing meat and increasing our vegetables, or a whole food plant-based lifestyle. And so I want to encourage you to, and I blanked out on Dr. Michael Clapper. We did the good, the bad, the ugly on salt, sugar, and oil. Great show. I want to encourage you to go back there and listen to that if you missed it. Go to whenyouneedafriend.com. This is where we have our conversation about responsible living. And Dr. Neal Barnard is the founder of Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. And so we can choose how we want our life to be. We can use food as a weapon of mass destruction, or it could be used to heal every cell in your body. We're in choice. We're always in choice. And so with that in mind, I want to encourage you to go to whenyouneedafriend.com. Please become a subscriber. And when you subscribe and you're playing around on my website, just know that there are some little buttons that you can click, like my social media buttons. Follow me there. My YouTube video, click on there and subscribe. When you subscribe to my website or my YouTube, it goes, the shows automatically get sent to you, which is wonderful. So if you want to revisit a show, or if you didn't have time to listen to it, it'll make it easy for you. While you are playing around at whenyouneedafriend.com, please go to my shopping area, because that's always good, and to my sponsors. Without my sponsors, this show would not happen. So please go to my sponsors page, check them out, and figure out ways you can support them the way they're supporting the show. So help me grow the show by sharing this with your friends, your family. We're actually doing a contest that ends this weekend. And the contest is to be a friend. Send me an email at lily@whenyouneedafriend.com. Tell me all the people that you have shared this show with that are wanting to become subscribers and that they have liked me on my social media, like one of them, or even my YouTube. And when you send me this list, we'll verify, and whoever wins will get 3 free life coaching sessions from me. This is over a $300, a $400 value. So I want to encourage all of you to help me grow the show. And this is how we're doing this little campaign, this contest, and hopefully you'll be a part of it. You can follow me on demand on iTunes, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Stitcher. And as always, you can reach me at 407-373-5959. So today we're talking to Dr. Neal Barnard, and he is the founder of Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. I want to encourage all of you to go to pcrm.org and learn a new truth, grow with him. And so Dr. Barnard, so let's talk about, you talked about the 7 days where you increase your vegetables, and then you go 3 weeks where you're all vegan all the time. Other tips that you can share with our listeners that would like to try doing this because of the health benefits?
Sure. We talked about the most important, and that's focusing on the short term, because people get daunted if they think, I'm never, ever going to be able to have another steak or whatever.
Correct.
Maybe so, but don't worry about that for right now, because
maybe so.
you can always change if you want to. Just focus on the short term, and that allows you to really embrace it more and really get the results. Also, when I got to tell you something, my North Dakota upbringing taught me the value of thinking internationally. Once I moved to Washington, D.C., and I realized that healthy eating doesn't mean deprivation. It means exploration. So whether it's an Italian restaurant or a Chinese restaurant or a Mexican restaurant or Thai or Japanese, go there and see what they have that might be from the world of plants. So you go into a sushi bar and you say, could you make me a sushi roll that doesn't actually have animal products? So they'll say, sure. Do you want cucumbers inside? Do you want carrots? Do you want tofu? Do you want avocado? What do you want? And try it out. I mean, I never had miso soup or seaweed salad growing up in Fargo, but explore. So think international, try out these things, and it becomes fun. And bring the same exploration with you when you go into the food store. Dig around in the aisles you might not have looked at for a while, or at the health food store. Try different things and just see. If something's not so hot, okay, that's what experimenting is all about. You'll have some winners and losers, but when you experiment, it's the coolest thing, because instead of thinking, I'll never be able to eat X, you're looking at all the neat things that you could try and test drive and share with other people. And you can do that with websites. You can do it with DVDs and movies online. because there's so many great ones now, from What the Health to Eating You Alive and Forks Over Knives and so forth.
Yeah.
It's the coolest thing to be able to share that. You can do that with products at the store. You can do it with books. So explore and really have fun with it, because, you don't want to wave your finger at other people and moralize. What you want to do instead is to share the joy of things that you've discovered.
I love it. I love it. So I hear you, and I hear people say, I don't want to ever, I can't eat meat ever again, or I can't have this or processed foods ever again. I tell them that if they think of it that way, then it's like a thought of deprivation. But if they think of, I won't ever have diabetes again, or I won't have to deal with this skin condition ever again, or I don't have to deal with worried about my heart condition again. That's about abundance and healing. I mean, does that make sense?
Oh, completely. Let me tell you a short story. It's a true story. We were doing a research study here at the Physicians Committee a few years ago on diabetic neuropathy. This is people, they've had diabetes for a while. But the neuropathy means the diabetes has started to attack your nerves, especially the feet. And you get this pain in the feet. Sometimes it's needles and pins. Sometimes it's a burning sensation. And it can also be on the tips of your fingers as well, and other parts of the body. I had a guy in the study. He was a jazz player. Mm-hmm. And he couldn't play because his fingers were attacked by his neuropathy. And so he came in and we changed his diet in a big way. And what he discovered is, yes, he was throwing out the foods that had caused the diabetes, but as time went on, he was losing weight, his blood sugar was coming down, and he discovered that he could play his instrument again, and his energy was better. And one night he came we have these support groups, and he said, "I'll tell you, best thing of all, my erectile dysfunction is gone." High fives all the way around. So you could say, no, don't do any of that. Go back to your burgers and give up your jazz career, give up your sex life, He said, you wouldn't believe it. I would just feel great. So the point is, you can eat anything you want to. Lily, I don't know if I ever told you this. I used to be a smoker. Yes, I did. I was in medical school.
Unbelievable, right?
I was smoking cigarettes. I was eating a terrible diet. I used to sneak hamburgers into the medical library. But when I quit smoking, I realized that I couldn't just smoke once in a while. I had to just not do it. And I just focused on the short term. And I knew that I always could go buy them if I wanted to. It's not like you can't. Nobody's telling you not to. But at some point you realize,
why?
I like this better. I liked being a smoker in certain ways. But I really like being a non-smoker much more. Your clothes don't stink and all that, and it's so forth. And so when you change your diet, you can think, well, I liked those foods before, but I really like the way I'm doing it now. You have complete freedom. You can go back and buy cigarettes. You can buy any food you want to. It's all there for you. And every day you can just make a new decision. But for me, I just think, I'm so glad I'm not smoking anymore. And I'm so glad I've changed my diet.
What a great story.
Yeah. Yep.
What a great story. And, one of the things that comes to mind, and I've shared this before, is that no one ever runs into a smoking building to breathe the air.
Oh,
People that actually.
Now you steal that. That's a good.
Oh, well, if you give me credit,
I'll give you credit, Lillian.
Okay. But, no one ever goes, and I created a meme that, no one ever goes into a smoking building to breathe the air. There are actually people that risk their lives to save you from that. No one would ever do that. Why would we smoke? Because our home, our temple, we're filling it up with smoke. So, that's what comes to mind for me. So I'm so grateful that you have been able to beat that addiction. But we're really speaking about addictions, food addictions. We're addicted to sugar. We're addicted to salt. We're addicted to oils, meats. Can you express that?
It's not necessarily a moral issue, but people get hooked on things and they get unhooked, and then they get the benefit.
And so it's as simple as that. And so what I'd like to also address is the steps. We talked about the different steps, but socially, like I said before at the beginning of the show, when I announced that I was going to, the times that I have changed my eating lifestyle, and it started off with food allergies. And so I gave up wheat and gluten and dairy and all these things. It was horrible. The mocking, the accusations, the name calling, and that was from my family. Right. Can you imagine going outside of the family and making a decision to do that. I mean, how difficult, and I do want to address that. I want to address the social aspect of deciding to reduce our meat intake and increase our vegetable intake. And we're going to continue our conversation. If you have any questions for Dr. Neal Barnard, you are welcome to call 407-373-5959. And we're going to continue our conversation when we return worldwide at whenyounneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you. Yes, that is a visual that I get every time I see somebody smoking, is the men and women that have risked their lives to save us from smoke.
Yeah, but you know, the human brain can get buffeted by so many things. And nicotine, whoever figured out the fact you could light up tobacco and that nicotine would come out of it, and that just has this powerful effect on the brain. And people do get hooked on it. And anybody can. And it's like getting hooked on caffeine or alcohol or sugar. As I've gone through life, I've started to think that people can get hooked on so many things. And I try not to moralize about it. Or make them feel like they're in some way a failure or that it's their bad upbringing. That's just kind of the way the human brain is. It'll get hooked on things. And if we're paying a price for it, then now's the time to get unhooked. And we just try to use certain techniques to help people to unhook from the bad stuff.
And so what about those techniques? Can we address some of those techniques when we go back on the air?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So techniques to beat addiction.
Yes.
Okay, I'll put that down. Because I think that that's probably one of the biggest reasons people do not. It's the fear of the giving up. Yep. And some people find value in being sick because if I'm sick, nobody will expect me to do anything.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Sadly, yes. Yeah.
So how do we go beyond that? Because I want to address that, and perhaps maybe the why. You know, your why. Why did you quit smoking?
Why did I quit smoking?
Yeah, why did you quit smoking?
Well, you know, we weren't idiots. You know, this was in the 1980s. We knew that smoking causes cancer. We knew it as much then as people know today. But our attitude was well, it takes time to get cancer. And so I'm under stress now, and as long as I quit soon, I'll be okay. And it's the same thing as why do people eat burgers and bacon now? I think they know that it contributes to heart disease, or some of them know that it contributes to colorectal cancer and so forth, although not everybody knows that. But people figure, well, I'll quit later. It takes a long time to get those health problems. But for me, the reason I quit is I just realized I had to. You know, it's just too dangerous of a thing. So, you know, when you're working really hard, as I was, and you know, all of the other medical students, we all smoked, and we all knew we couldn't do this for very long. But at some point, I just thought enough is enough, and I'm going to quit it. And I stepped into it, and I realized that these addictions are powerful. But I also realized that I did not want to be the slave of something unhealthy like that. And I threw them out and never went back.
So that's what you did? You just threw them out and never went back? Or did you take steps mentally, emotionally, spiritually? Did you take on, because that's something else that people do. Yeah. They quit an addiction, let's say smoking, and then they'll start eating unhealthy foods. So
yeah, we see that with alcohol a lot. Where when people have a serious alcohol issue and they stop it, very often they will get into junk food. You may have seen people like that, where suddenly donuts and sugar is calling their name, and they've broken an alcohol addiction, which is a great thing to do. It's so good to break that, but they might have substituted a food addiction, and that's a big problem.
Can we address that too on the air?
Absolutely.
Okay. I think I hear the music. It's kind of like in the background.
At 407.
I think I did hear it.
5959.
The last segment.
Once again, here's Lillian.
Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott radio show, where we always learn and grow together. Today's teacher is Dr. Neal Barnard, and I am so grateful every time he comes on. Such a gentle disposition. You can find him at Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. That's PCRM.org. That's what you want in a doctor, is to feel responsible to bring the latest. Look at your doctor. I want you to take a really good look at your doctor. If he looks healthy, continue listening to him. If he doesn't look healthy, find another one, because it is important that you practice what you preach. And if a doctor doesn't know how to feed himself and how to take care of himself, how will, or herself, and I'm not trying to be sexist, themselves, then how will they take care of you with the same practices that they live their life? So it's just something to think about. You have the power to fire your doctor and choose the doctor you want, especially if you have Liberty Health Share. You can go anywhere. So I want to encourage you to do that little experiment with anyone that's giving you advice, not in judgment, but with curiosity. Be curious about these things. So while we were off the air, we were talking about how Dr. Neal Barnard ended his addiction to smoking cigarettes. But then I asked the question, you know, most people that stop smoking will substitute with something harmful, like eating a really terrible diet. So I'd love for you to go over this, Dr. Barnard, if you can share a little bit of little tips on how to substitute with something healthy.
Yeah. What people are looking for is dopamine, you know, the pleasure chemical. Every drug of abuse increases dopamine in the brain. And so suddenly, let's say a person broke an alcohol habit or a drug habit, they've lost that source of dopamine. But what they're going for instead now is they're thinking, well, maybe junk food will give it to me or something else. And you run into a big problem that way. You've broken your alcohol habit, which is great, but now you're gaining weight because of the junk food you're eating. So you can get dopamine in healthier ways. And surprisingly enough, medical research has shown that you get a little bit of extra dopamine in your brain from socializing with other people. And the more intense the socialization is, the more dopamine you get. By that I mean, if you're talking with somebody on the phone, okay, that's one level. If you're with a group together, that's one thing. If it's an intimate or a romantic relationship, you get even more. So with Alcoholics Anonymous, why do people get together every single day? Yes, they're getting support, they're getting challenged, but they're also getting a little bit of dopamine just from being together.
Interesting.
So use some social support. So what does that mean? That means, let's say you're making a diet change. It's great to let your family know you're going to do it. But like your family, they might feel like, oh my God, you're going to guilt me now. You're going to expect me to do it. Say, no, that's not what I'm doing.
No.
What I'm doing, here's the magic words. You say, I need you to help me because I'm tempted by things. And I want you, if you see somebody trying to push me to eat something healthy, would you stand up for me and stop me from doing that? Because I really want to do this. They'll become your defender. But what you're really doing is you're circling yourself with people who can surround you. Secondly, we already talked about not just social support, but a short-term focus. Mm-hmm. That's the one day at a time idea of alcohol abuse, but you see it with other things too.
Yes.
And third, now is the time to take care of yourself. If you're an accountant, April 14th is not the time for you to go vegan because you are probably too darn stressed out, with tax day and everything else. So pick a time when you're ready to make a change. Make sure you get plenty of rest. And in order to get rest, you need to also get exercise. So you're using your body and you're tired, and that will help you to sleep better. And if you get into that kind of groove, then the volume just turns way, 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 way down. Don't starve yourself, no matter what addiction you're trying to break. Make sure that you got healthy food around you and abundance so that you're not turning toward junk food. So if you're well rested, if you're getting exercise, if you're fed adequately with good foods around you, you got the people around you, got some social support, you got a short-term focus, it's still a job. And your fragile brain will still be attracted by other things. But you will get there. And if you goof up, this is not a moral failing. Just be your own best coach and say, I love you back. You're going to come right back. I believe in you. We don't you get rid of the negativity. Just everybody goofs up. Come on back. Let's take it from here. And you're going to succeed.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, the best tip for you was when you quit smoking is you just quit. You didn't smoke once a week or once a month. You just quit. And so sometimes it's really, it's that motion of just quitting that paralyzes people. And I love the fact that you're talking about dopamine and how we get dopamine by being surrounded by other people. But are there certain foods that can also trigger that dopamine response. I don't know.
Well, yeah, and some of them could do it too much. Sugar will do it. Caffeine will do it as well. Meat will do it a little bit. It has drug effects. Cheese has drug effects of its own. So those foods kind of lure us into trouble. And what I'm really thinking of is just healthy foods in general. But let me come back to something you were describing about how sometimes it's best to really just break a habit rather than try to moderate with it. I'm a child of the 60s, really. So we didn't like rules at all. You know, we didn't have people to tell us how to cut our hair, what to wear. And so I was kind of that way with food too. But I've come to understand that sometimes in life, a rule that you set with yourself is a good one. So let's say a person has an alcohol problem. They are going to discover it is much harder to have a drink once a week than it is to just not drink at all. Or if a person is a smoker, they're going to discover it's harder to have just one cigarette a day than it is to just quit. And so if you've got a problem with food, it is much harder to tease yourself, have it on your shelf, have you see it every day. It's much easier to just get it out of your life, because then you have the power of momentum and you can start to forget these things that lure you back. If you keep that devil on your shoulder and carry him with you everywhere you go, you're going to have more trouble. So it's building a fence between you and the thing that is hurting you is sometimes a good idea.
Can you think of any other tips? That's a great tip and a great reason for the tip. Is there any other? Because it's sad to hear that there's healthy foods doesn't boost your dopamine.
They do. The thing is, eating does give you dopamine, but the thing about it is, our brains get hijacked by foods that nature never intended us for us to have. Now, let's say you're getting a sugar high. Where did that sugar come from? That sugar came from sugar cane, which was growing somewhere, and somebody figured out the technology for throwing away all the fiber and concentrating that sugar and stuffing it into your cerebrum. And the same with alcohol or tobacco. All of these are products of technology that, broadly speaking, agricultural technology, so that you're exposing yourself to something that was not there when your brain was being formed. So you're getting this hyper amount of dopamine. Same with something like cocaine or something. You're getting way too much dopamine. That's why it's addictive. So get the strawberries and blueberries and brown rice give you just a little bit of dopamine. And once you kind of get into healthy eating and a better routine, then your mood stabilizes and you'll have more power over the long run.
Awesome. So because I get excited about a mango and I get excited about blueberries and I get excited. So we can shift it. We can switch is what I'm hearing you say.
That's because you're in balance. But if a person is a crack addict, they're going to say, don't give me your darn mango. I need something. Once they get those things out of their lives, then you can appreciate the beauty that nature wanted to give you all along.
Don't give me no stinking mango. Give me some crack. Give me some crack.
You know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
You know, when people are into chocolatey desserts and all these kinds of things, piled really high, it's when they come down to taste more humble foods, it takes them a little while to see their beauty.
And so the mindset, the social mindset, I love how you're saying, ask for help, ask for what you need. Is there anything else that we can, because we talked about the protein, we talked about the calcium, we talked about how people are eating with a whole food plant-based. It's a wonderful balanced diet. But is there anything that you can share with us that will just get us psyched up, Coach?
Okay. It's very, very easy. The rules are with a vegan diet, no animal products, keep the oils pretty low, vegetables, fruits, whole grains, beans. You do need to take vitamin B12. That's true. But the diet is much more vitamin rich than, say, a meaty diet. Meat doesn't have any vitamin C. It doesn't have any fiber. So you're going to be much better nourished and much healthier. Give it a try. The planet will thank you. I'm sure the animals will thank you if only they knew where you were. There's lots of good reasons to do it. So do it as an exploration.
Thank you, Dr. Neal Barnard. And for those of you, you can go to pcrm.org to learn more. Thank you so much. You're always so insightful when you come on. And to you, my listening friends, please remember, I'll be right here waiting for you. It's time. Let's take our life back. This is Lillian McDermott wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. Good job. This was fun. I really like this topic because it makes us see just the silly way we think, just the different ways that we think like an addict, and we just are not open. Do you find that when people come to your place at the beginning, and what transformation do you see mentally?
All the time. But you know, if you have an air of just acceptance and sort of forgiveness, and you demoralize all these things, and what we're just talking about is basic biology, and we can tackle that, and we can get power over it, and people can feel really well. So,
thank you so much, Dr. Neal Barnard.
Anyway,
It's like this every time I was saying your
name,
name, it's like, did I say it right? Did I say it right? Because
you're saying fine.
I've been calling you Dr. Neal Barnard in such a long time. So,
Well, if I was born with that name, that would have been better, but what can you say? Anyway, thanks. Let's do it again.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.
Nice to see you. Bye.
Bye.